The number of coronavirus cases has sharply risen following changes in the way it's diagnosed. The World Health Organization is seeking clarity from China after 15,000 more infections were recorded on Wednesday. 254 more deaths have been confirmed. That's more than double the previous daily record. Almost all of them are in Hubei province. Almost 60,000 people in China are now known to be infected, and the number of those killed stands at more than 1,300. Also, officials in Vietnam have placed a town of 10,000 people under quarantine following 5 cases of virus infection there. Vietnam declared a public health emergency over the epidemic at the beginning of this month. And in Japan, a cruise ship, the Diamond Princess, remains quarantined in Yokohama after an outbreak of the virus on board. It's now thought 218 passengers and crew members are among those infected. Our correspondent, Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, is in the port.
So the number of infections on board the Diamond Princess behind me here in Yokohama has again jumped today. 44 new cases confirmed today. That followed 39 cases yesterday. And that brings the total number of infections from the ship to 218. And that means, as we know now, that this is now the single biggest outbreak of the COVID-19 virus anywhere outside mainland China. The Japanese government has made a small concession to the criticism that has been building of the way that it's handling this outbreak. They've said that very elderly people over the age of 80 will be allowed to disembark if they have underlying health conditions or if they are in one of those inside cabins that don't have any outside windows or balconies. So expect to see that start happening maybe tonight or on Friday. But there are many questions that remain. First of all, obviously, are infections still taking place? Is the virus still circulating around the ship? No one really knows. And the other big question is, why still has the Japanese government not managed to test all of the passengers and crew on board?
Well, let's get you some real expertise now. David Heyman is a professor of infectious disease epidemiology at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. David previously directed the World Health Organization response to the SARS outbreak in 2003. David, first I want to talk to you about the mortality rate. The reports were seeing put the mortality rate of this virus at about 2%.
Right, that's right, and that would be at the level of influenza, seasonal influenza. Each year there are about 1 to 2% of people who die, unfortunately. But what's happened in China is the case definition, that is the way they define a disease, has included pneumonia. And so they're missing all the less severe cases of disease and only looking at those that are most severe. So of course, the mortality is higher among those people. So the case definition recently has been changed in China, and they're now including less severe symptoms as well in their diagnosis.
And something that's important now is the way they're testing. It has been to do with these lab kits beforehand. And what's been the problem with those?
Well, they've been using test kits that detect nucleic acid. The problem with them is that it takes a long time to get a result, longer than they want. It takes sometimes a day for them to get a result.
And does it require some expertise to administer and to read?
Absolutely. It requires both expertise and skill and making sure that there isn't contamination from the laboratory around it. So what they've done recently is 2 things. They've developed a more rapid point of use test for nucleic acid, which they've rolled out. It's not clear how effective this is, but they're using it. And in addition, they've changed the way they diagnose, and in some instances, they're just diagnosing based on symptoms and an X-ray, which means there's no nucleic acid diagnosis.
So does that mean the number of diagnoses, the number of confirmed cases, is bound to jump?
Absolutely, because not only are they finding cases of coronavirus, but they're finding other diseases that also, or other infections rather, that also cause pneumonia. So they're seeing an increase in the number of cases and a decrease in what we call the specificity of diagnosis.
So what, in kind of real world terms, David, what does this mean? Does it mean that just that the clinicians are able to spot coronavirus better, or that we should be alarmed at the way in which it is spreading or the rate at which it's spreading?
Well, certainly it's spread throughout China. And China is making every effort they can in the way that they do best to stop the disease. What's important, though, is those 24 sites outside of China and also the cruise ships. That's where the information about how severe the disease is will really come from, because the patients here are being monitored very closely, as are their contacts. And we're learning a lot as we see what happens in these situations, which hopefully will lock down the disease in these countries and not permit it to spread further.
Is there an issue here in that China's obviously Communist Party, state-controlled, command and control to a certain extent? For other countries, not the case, and it might be that there's less grip on the way centres are run, the ability to build the medical facilities as well.
Well, clearly, in the SARS outbreak, China had the same type of a lockdown, and they rapidly got rid of the infection. In other countries where there was a different approach, it sometimes recurred after they thought they had it controlled. So there are benefits of authoritarianism, but there are also disadvantages. And the disadvantages, of course, are an infringement on human rights.
How would you describe your level of concern about the coronavirus outbreak?
I think we're all concerned about what we don't know.
Right.
We know so far what's happening and what we can see, but what we don't know is the real potential of this virus, whether or not this eventually could become a disease endemic in humans like TB, influenza, or others, because influenza also comes from animals into humans, and it sometimes becomes a permanent resident.
David Heyman, really appreciate you coming in today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.